Welcome to Life List, a birding podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Life List, a birding podcast. I am George Armistead. I am here with my co-hosts, Molly Brown and Alvaro Jaramillo. Guys, how are you doing today?
Hello.
Hey, doing great.
Excellent.
Busy day. Busy
day.
Fun stuff, though. Yeah.
Nice. I'm going to warn everybody ahead of time that Al has boat voice again.
Hello. Hey.
He's working the Barry White again. Yep.
Yeah.
Pelagic season. Al's voice drops an octave or two.
Right, from the screaming.
Yeah.
You know.
Yelling skua.
Lays an albatross. You know, that scream.
Oh, yes. That's a good scream to hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just interrupt our podcast with that sometimes.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I did. I didn't get to scream it out because Eli Gross found it, but we had a Hawaiian petrel too yesterday. Number 5 for this season in
that's
3
absurd.
trips.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself. That's
I know.
That's a lot. That's ridiculous. Did you
Supposed
get
to
to
be
yell
rare.
that one out?
No, because it was. I didn't spot that one, so it's like,
Gotcha.
I was talking to somebody and suddenly it was like, what?
Nice. Excellent. Well, guys, we have a great guest here today, one we have been anxious to get on our show for a while. And we are very happy to welcome David Lindo, the urban birder, broadcaster, writer, speaker, tour leader, and educator with the mission of engaging city people around the world with the environment where they live. He's the author of the book, The Urban Birder, Tales from the Concrete Jungles, Urban Birding, How to Be an Urban Birder, and The Extraordinary World of Birds. David, we're so thankful to have you here. How are you doing today?
You know what? I am delighted to be here, guys. And I'm doing okay, actually. I'm here in southwestern Spain in a region called Extremadura, which may be known by some people watching or listening to this podcast. But life is good, actually. I've got 2 legs and I'm still breathing.
All right.
I could have guessed, you were in Spain from that thick Spanish accent you had.
You know what? I've been based in Spain for 8 years and my Spanish is horrible. I just can't. I just cannot. I can understand a lot more now. But I remember when I first turned up, I was with my then girlfriend and I was chatting to one of her friends who was a lovely looking woman. And I was trying to impress her with my Spanish. And I thought I'd talk about the Ebola virus. But instead of saying Ebola, I said embolas, which means naked. And what I actually said to her is, would you get naked? And she looked at me and smiled and in English said, not here, David.
At least
which wasn't a no.
Did you follow that up with that you were very embarazada? Embarazada, that's the other big one.
Yeah, right. Muy embarazada. Oh, you're very pregnant, are you?
That is a mistake many have made. Yeah.
No. I think Spain, boy, well, we'll get to talk about Spain, but what a wonderful country.
It is.
Yeah, I actually we could talk about it a little bit right now because I'm kind of curious. I actually, leading into our conversation here, I was like, I wonder, what's being seen in Spain right now? Extremadura is a fabulous area for migration, right? For bird migration.
It is, but there's other spots in Spain which pick up much more. I mean, for example, along the coast where, the coast of Galicia and where else is there? Asturias, around that area. You get a lot of stuff, especially North American vagrants showing up there. Yikes. And then over in the east, just south of Barcelona, the Ebro Delta, you get stuff picked up all the time there. And then south of us in Extremadura, you got Tarifa in the Straits of Gibraltar. Yesterday, I think a golden. Was it Sudanese? The Sudan golden sparrow turned up, which was like, whoa.
Yeah, that's a good-looking bird too. That's not just your average vagrant. Yeah, you guys are well inland, so I guess you're probably as well known for your breeding birds as any.
Yeah, But anything can turn up anywhere at any time. And I think a lot of people that come to Extremadura, they are all about looking for the classics, the staples, the bustards, the sandgrouse and the larks. And they're not looking for anything else. And you're looking at an area which I think is just under the size of Kentucky. So it's a big area. And there's maybe 16 full-on birders covering that whole area.
Wow.
So things are missed. Last few weeks we've had things like Eleonora's falcon, which is a Mediterranean species, but in Extremadura, maybe one turns up or one's found every year. I think yesterday or day before there was a marsh sandpiper found. But I believe that this stuff turns up all the time. It's just that everyone cannot cover everywhere, It's just such a huge place. And it's so bloody hot as well at the moment.
I saw there's a laughing gull over there someplace now.
Yeah, that's up in the north. That's probably Galicia or Asturias or someplace like that.
Galicia is where it is. Yep, Galicia.
Yeah, no, I heard too that you're talking about the heat, that there's a major drought and that, a lot of the wetlands are basically drying out at this point. Is that true? Is it, I think it was going on last year as well, if I remember right.
Well, this whole drought business has been ongoing. There was one year I was here and it didn't rain for over 18 months. But having said that, a lot of the reservoirs in Extremadura still have water. They're maintained, artificially, so they still contain water. Some rivers are dry, others aren't. And there's some places like Coto de Llana, which is famously in trouble because people have been siphoning off the water for agriculture illegally, draining large areas that have been, once really good for birding. But the temperatures, I guess this year I've tipped over the 40-degree mark, 110, whatever it is, or I can't make the conversion, but a couple of times this year. Last year, the whole of August was practically over 40 degrees. So, I think this year hasn't been as hot, but it's tough going out birding in that kind of, heat. It's tough.
Yeah. 40 degrees Celsius is hot any way you slice it. That's a lot. Yeah.
And the thing is, it's hard because when you go birding in that kind of weather, firstly, you've got to be in your car most of the time. The mornings, there's activity, especially with passerines. At the moment, I've been sort of looking for migrants. I've been going to a couple of places that no one else goes to just to check bushes and stuff. And there's a few bits and pieces. And then come midday until about 5, there's nothing. A few larks, a few Thekla's larks, a couple of Iberian magpies, a few vultures overhead, but there's nothing. And it's really tough because when it's so hot, it's hard to keep your concentration going, and you just think, you know what, I'm going home. It is pretty tough. Yeah. But my favorite time for birding in Extremadura is from September onwards, really, because in the autumn, as you say, there's lots of migration. There's millions, certainly, of flycatchers, like pied flycatcher and spotted flycatcher coming through, as well as a whole load of warblers and other such birds. And plus, it's a great time for shorebirds as well. And as you get later into the year, November time, December, there's a few of those birds that still hang around. And also some of the rice fields have been harvested and they're actually wet. And they're kind of these amazing kind of mini wetland habitats. And there's one particular area of rice fields, which I'd say is about probably 30 miles in length. It's contiguous. It's not one whole sort of rice field. There's some fields that aren't rice fields at all, but there's quite a few kind of wet fields along this 30-mile stretch. And some fields are empty, and other fields you just find a whole bunch of shorebirds. I remember once coming to a field and I counted 401 ruff in one little field feeding together. They've obviously just coming together. It's just amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ruff is one of those magic birds in North America because it's a vagrant everywhere. There's no place it sort of shows up all the time kind of thing, but it could be found in any state or province. It's like you could always find a ruff somewhere. You have the possibility. It's kind of a magic bird. There's not many like that, right?
Forktail flycatcher.
Forktail flycatcher, yeah. it's rare, but not so rare that, your chance of finding one is zero, but you could. But if you find one, it's a vagrant. We don't have them here, at least so in general.
It reminds me
I
of
like ruffs.
there used to be a series called in Birding Magazine. They did, I don't know if it was for a year or a couple of years, and it was called Possible Anywhere. And it was like rare birds that pretty much could turn up just about anywhere,
Right.
That would have fit the bill.
Was it like predictions?
It was more like you should keep your eyes out for this bird. Like fork-tailed flycatcher was one where, Cape May, I think has got more than just about any other spot. The only one I've ever seen was at Cape May. The only one I've ever seen in the ABA area. But they turn up, and they could turn up in any state, any Canadian province. Basically, they stray widely and can turn up anywhere. And ruff is sort of the same. Like they can really turn up. So it was more like the series was like, all right, people, look at this bird, be prepared. This would be a mind blower that could potentially turn up in your neck of the woods. So just be alert.
Because North America is so big that we have some vagrants that really only show up in the East Coast, or only show up in Florida, or only show up in the West. But ruff and fork-tailed flycatcher could just show up anywhere. It's kind of a cool thing.
When you get ruff coming, you just get them in their non-breeding plumage. You ever get them with vestiges of their summer garb?
Almost any month now they could turn up.
Yeah.
We get actually a fair number in the spring when you do get males. A lot are sort of reeve types, female young birds in autumn or in the spring, but you can get females, but there are they like, I don't know if they've been proven to breed in Alaska, but they likely have bred in Alaska.
Yeah. I don't think they've been proven to breed.
Yeah. I've seen displaying males in Barrow, but in Ukqiavik, but
those things will display to anything,
They really will.
They're kind of like, they're loose with
They're such cool birds. I feature them in my pornithology talk, where we talk about, there's the different kinds of males. There's the ones that, there's the red collared ones, the black collared ones, the salt and pepper ones, and then you have these fader males, they're called, which look exactly like the females, but they have testes, and the testes are like 2 to 3 times bigger than the other males, and they basically kind of sneak around and have sneaky copulations. When all those other males are duking it out for dominance, the fader males, are sneaking around doing sneaky stuff.
Is it true that there's no two male ruffs alike in the world? Every single male's different.
I think it's overstated a bit, but people certainly say that.
Yeah.
That's my take anyway. I feel like, there are, like, I'm sure that, I don't know if it's quite like the tail pattern on humpback whales or other whales where they all have sort of a fingerprint. I bet it's pretty close to that, but it seems like there are some male ruffs you see that are just kind of black collared and otherwise, but they are super variable, of course, really, really variable.
Yeah. Hey, David, so we know you, we've met you, we've birded with you, but a lot of North Americans, right? They don't really know the urban birder and what the concept is of the urban birder. I mean, you can imagine it's birding in urban zones, but what is what do you do as the urban birder, and what have you done over the years? Because I think a lot of people would be interested in finding out.
Well, the urban birding thing, I guess I was born into, because I was born in northwest London with an innate interest in natural history. And I always say, because no one taught me, I had no mentor, I just had this interest. And I always say that in a previous life, I am convinced that I was a puma in the Rockies. And towards the end of my life, I was stalking probably some kind of ptarmigan or something like that. I'm not sure, because I wasn't a birder at that point. And I think that I went to pounce, and the bird flew before I could get to it. And I saw this bird fly, and I thought, wow, you look amazing. So I became a birding puma, and I stopped eating as well. And just before I died, I thought, this is a really interesting thing I got into here. Maybe if there's something else after this, maybe I can take this on. And luckily I was born a human and I did take it on. So when I was a kid, I had this interest. It started off in basically it started off with invertebrates. But I then noticed birds eating them. But no one was around me to sort of show me. So I kind of started teaching myself with no books. So I gave birds my own names. And basically I was told that you can only see wildlife in the countryside. You can't see it in the city. But I had no one to take me there. So in the end, I kind of turned around and looked around myself and realized actually there's a hell of a lot of stuff here. So that's where the urban birding thing started, even though I didn't realize I was an urban birder. But I guess the reason why I championed this whole thing was because about 16 years ago, I received an email from the BBC to appear on a program on the BBC, which was one of their biggest wildlife programs. It was called, or is called, Springwatch, to talk about my local patch in West London. So I did it. And afterwards, I really loved the idea of presenting and talking about wildlife in cities. And I thought, why not give myself a moniker? No one else has a moniker. And basically, I looked around myself and I saw, for example, Jamie Oliver, the famous chef. He at the time was called the Naked Chef. So I thought, okay, I'll call myself, what about the city birder? The urban birder, that sounds better. So basically, it started from there. And I realized initially I invented the name to try and get myself more work in TV and media. But then I realized actually, when I realized how shallow, how small that window of opportunity was, I decided that I would actually go out there and do a job, because I realized that, there was a lot of people living in urban areas who didn't actually understand that nature is all around you, or all around them. They thought that, what I was told in the beginning, that you had to go somewhere else to actually see this sort of stuff. So it started from there. So my sort of vocation in life is just to try and get people to try and engage them and get them to look up and to see that there's this wonderful world outside your front window. Just as I'm watching George now looking through his binoculars, that's what I'm trying to say. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
What did you see, George, by the way?
It's this same. I've had an adult chipping sparrow feeding a juvenile chipping sparrow for the last week or so here, and it's kind of satisfying because I took some seed heads from some past flowered oxeye sunflower and just scattered them outside my window here this morning, and so they're feeding on that. And so I was like, that's pretty cool. It looked like the juvenile has a little wound, so I was just checking that, but it looks like it should be all right.
See, I love all that, because that's what, for me, urban birding is about. It's about just noticing this sort of stuff all around you, and you don't even have to know what you're looking at. And that's the thing I always say to people, because the urban birder, as a name, as a brand or whatever, is just a Trojan horse that I drive into town and say, guys, get out here. Look, there's birds and other wildlife you can look at. You don't need to know anything. It's like Pilates. It's like yoga. And everyone comes out. It's like meditation. Oh, really? And then you get people on board. And that's really what I'm about. I'm about trying to get new people involved so that they can then, I'm a bridge. They climb over me, and then they can either get involved or not, but they've climbed over me. And that's what I want them to do.
Yeah, it's really, I remember hearing about you ages ago and thinking that was really clever, that you did take on a moniker in a sense that it seems like more accessible in a sense, because they know urban birder's not your name, right? But you're almost like a concept. And it's there's some magic about it, just sort of saying, oh, well, I'm going to listen to what, David's doing. He's the urban birder. He's telling us about parks. He's telling us about birds and so on. And also being birding in cities, it does make it like appealing to almost anybody. Because even if you are living in the countryside and you have birds all around you, you can still glom on to the concept of there's wildlife everywhere, right? Like, which is what you're talking about It's really cool. I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
well done.
It is. It is really cool. It was a pleasure, David, to have you come here to Philly in this past spring in May. I as a longtime birder, I didn't start birding in the city that I grew up in and spent my whole life in until a little 12, 14 years ago or something like that. And I heard about you at the time when I started birding in Philly, and it did speak to me as somebody who was like, I've been exploring the areas outside the city for my whole birding life. Now, the biggest mystery to me is what birds are actually using city parks and city areas.
Exactamente. That's exactly how I feel, because it's all about exploring the middle of somewhere. Because, we have so many things we don't realize that are all around us, but we're too busy going into the middle of nowhere. And I think obviously that's great to do that. But I get excited. I get really excited going to a city that I've never been to. I mean, a lot of cities I go to, I Google, and there's absolutely nothing about urban birding. I mean, I remember going to Seville once. Well, I've been there many times, but I was writing an article about Seville. I just, out of interest, Googled to see if there's anything. There was nothing. So you become an urban explorer. You go into these parks, you go into these sewage farms, you go to these reservoirs, rivers, what have you, within urban areas, and you can find some amazing things. I mean, for me, the proof in the pudding is when you go, for example, to northern Serbia, and you go to that now famous town of Kikinda, the owl capital of the world. Their town square has had up to 850 long-eared owls sitting in the middle of a city, the middle of an urban area, under people's noses. And no one knew about it until maybe 20 years ago because no one looked. Yeah. So for me, it's about turning in the opposite direction. I used to be ridiculed 20 years ago maybe for, instead of going to the coast to some headland to watch for migration, I went straight to central London. I was looking, because I was thinking, whatever migration's occurring at these wonderful spots, there's a microcosm of it happening on my patch. And that was enough for me to see, I remember one time there was a blockage of birds in southern England, and in one particular place called Portland Bill in southern England, there were 11,000 spotted flycatchers that showed up in that region. It must have been amazing. But instead of rushing down there, I waited for 2 days, went to my patch, and I found 11. And that for me was amazing, because I was the only person on my patch. They were my birds. It was the biggest record ever. That's enough for me. Fantastic.
Those owls, your presentation that you gave here in Philly in May, and I know it's a talk you've given elsewhere, and it's a fantastic talk. If folks haven't had the pleasure of hearing David speak, you should try to find a way to do so. But that really knocked everybody's socks off. Seeing the imagery and hearing you speak about those long-eared owls was just wild to see those in like urban circle there. Really something. It's like tough bird to see most places, but there, different story.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I saw them for the first time, again, about 15 years ago, in the summer, and coming to a wood in a park in an urban area and seeing 22 semi-colonially nesting long-eared owls. I mean, that just blew my brain out. I mean, I couldn't believe it to see that stuff. I've never seen a long-eared owl's nest outside of Serbia in my life. I don't know if you guys have, but I've never seen one.
Huh. Yeah.
I mean, nesting in wicker baskets, in the open.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Yeah. It's insane. I think it's such a cool concept too. I realized when I first started helping and guiding tours, and I was doing this in the US, that folks were coming on birding tours as their excuse to go birding. And it was like an organized thing that they had to go to rather than just birding wherever they were at any point. And I think the urban birding concept is really cool for that too, just to embrace birding anywhere you are at any point. You don't have to go out of your way for it, and you can enjoy the birds that are right in front of you. I imagine that applies to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting, Molly, is that over the last since 2019, I've started advertising day trips, city urban birding day trips anywhere in the world. I've got a whole roster of guides around the world, and it's been so popular. Oh, I'm going to Budapest. Okay, fine. Go, and they go out actually within the city birding. And it's great. It's a really interesting event for people who aren't birders, but also interesting for people who are birders because they learn about sites they never knew existed. And
Yeah.
often with urban birding, you get a lot closer to species than you would do if you're out in the rural areas or outside of cities. The same species. So it's a brilliant way of learning about birds as well, close to hand, close at hand.
I think that is really true about intercity birding, where I'm not sure. I think there's probably a couple things that work, but I've had it where I'm birding an inner city park and the birds simply don't seem frightened by me. And I think in some cases that's because they may be entrained and they may be in a small space where they really don't have many places to go, and then you have to be careful that you're not adding stress to them, or they may be just so stressed that they're just like, I'm eating, I don't care about you, I don't have time to worry about you. But I think you also get situations where they're like, okay, there's a lot of people around here. None of them seem particularly interested in me. I'm going to just do my thing. And you see that. Like there's a number of birds that I've gotten much, much better photos of in inner city places than I ever would outside the city. And there's certain birds where I think we've talked about speckled rail in the past as something that really, is a mythical bird that really has only turned up a few times, like in Buenos Aires and occasionally, elsewhere. But there's very, very few records of that. And I'm convinced that there's certain birds they're actually easier to find in city parks than they ever would actually be outside of it. And for instance, I think like half of the Connecticut warblers I've seen in Philadelphia have been at inner city parks, and that is because they are subject to getting entrained in the city and then can have difficult time getting out of it. But which is kind of a sad way to see a Connecticut warbler. But nonetheless, you get to appreciate the beauty of a bird that you'd seldom get to see otherwise.
There are some cities that are particularly good for birds because of where they are. Like David, you mentioned being in London. London's sort of away from the coast, right? So those big masses of migrant birds, are there, but they're not in. If that London was obviously, in the southeast coast or something, would be completely different. But I didn't realize when I was growing up in a city as a birder in Toronto that it is a fantastic birding city. There's so much, the lake, and hawk migration and shorebirds and everything. Chicago is a really fantastic birding city. I think because, again, the lake, San Francisco being on a peninsula, fantastic, Yeah. So you can't even, the cities also range from being just amazing, good birding spots to, Central Park, also in New York, to sometimes world famous birding spots.
I mean, I've been to 330 cities now in the past 16 years. I worked out if I visited one city every weekend with over 1 million population, it will take me 66 years. So that's my plan. And then after that, I'll spend the next 66 years going to all the museums and, all over places I should have gone. Anyway, it's interesting. London, you mentioned London. I mean, in the UK, our list of birds is roughly around about 620 species. But in London itself, it's been, I think, 370 species recorded, including some national rarities. I mean, Nauman's thrush, only ever seen in Britain once, and that was in London. But then, as other cities, you mentioned a few in the US, and I know some of them. I actually quite like Los Angeles as well because I spent many years going to Los Angeles every year practically, and I had my favorite spot by Iona Wetlands, and and other places I'd go to within the urban expanse, and it's just incredible the number of birds you see. But for me, I mean, going to places like Nairobi in Kenya, I mean, their species list is 600 for the city, 600. I went to the national park, the safari park they got next to the actual city itself. And in one morning, I clocked up 220 species just in sight of the city. So it shows you that some city areas are interesting. And, what I want to try and do is to convince people, firstly, that, because most people live in cities. So to convince them, firstly, that there is life to be protected here. And once you have them enlisted, once they're part of what I term as the conservation army, they're more likely to dip their hands into their pockets, to help raise money for whatever. They're more likely to sign petitions. They're more engaged, they're more invested, and also hopefully more likely to try and create greener and bluer areas within cities, and understand that, when we build a new area for housing, let's put a pond in there or lake. Let's plant a woodland. Let's get kids seeing this sort of stuff, even if they live in a city area. Let's get them used to seeing green and blue and not feel the compulsion to pollute. And that's my dream. I think I want to try and see if I can get people to think in a different way, really.
There's a cool event that people, I feel like a lot of birders may or may not know about, but, and it's not necessarily exclusive to birds, but it's called the City Nature Challenge. And it is done by, it kind of happens under the auspices of iNaturalist. But if you go to citynaturechallenge.org, you can see who's participating, and if your city is participating, you can get involved. It's a pretty big deal here in Philly. People really get up for it. I think traditionally, Cape Town, South Africa, really kicks some butt because they've got the whole Fynbos biome, and they've got just like a ridiculous number of endemic plants and insects associated with it. But there's kind of, there's some healthy rivalries, I would say, between various U.S. cities. But at any rate, that'd be something I'd recommend folks check out. Usually, I think it is in late April is typically when it happens, and it's a fun thing to do. Get out and basically take photos of as much as you can, try and document as much nature over the course of 3-4 days as you can for your town. So definitely something worth checking out. One thing I wanted to ask you, David, as somebody who has spent a lot of time both in Europe, obviously birding all over Europe, and has birded extensively in the United States in a variety of different places. How is birding as a pastime different? How are the countries different? What is your experience? And would be curious for some of the differences between the two communities. Obviously, these are really broad, diverse communities for the most part. Maybe not as diverse as would be ideal, but what are your impressions of birding in the U.S. versus birding in Europe?
Well, number one, there's far more birders, it seems, in the US than there are in Europe. Also, I find US birders much more friendly. I've never had any issues with anyone ever in the probably 30 years I've been birding in the US. I must make a confession here. Basically, in the beginning, when I was a kid, I was extremely jealous of the US and their birders, because I was thinking, you've got a massive list of birds, yet you also have our birds as well as vagrants. You're getting fieldfares and lapwings. It's not fair. How come you can see all that stuff and I can't see hardly any of your stuff? But then when I started going to the US and realizing, actually, it's a big place and not everyone has seen a lapwing or a brambling.
Never seen a field fair, by the way. That'd be a lifer for me. Genuine lifer.
Yeah, because I actually thought everyone saw them quite regularly, but obviously not. I then began to realize, it's different. But the other thing that struck me is the fact that how great the average US birder is when it comes to hearing birds. When I was in Philly, I didn't have the opportunity to bird with you, George, but I was with other people. And everyone was hearing everything. And I was like, I can't hear anything. You're telling me that that's a black and white warbler? I can't hear anything, And in the end, I kind of not gave up. I just sort of switched off a little bit. But then I began after a while to hear some stuff. I realized, I do actually hear warbling vireos now. I understand the song of a red-eyed vireo as well. So it was like starting again in many respects. And I get that even more when I'm in South America. I mean, I just give up completely. I just tell me what you want to tell me. So I found that really interesting, how people learn the songs and calls, I think much more than they do in Europe. I mean, of course, we hear stuff and of course we know what we're listening to. And maybe if the average American birder came over to Spain, for example, I'd probably hear more than they did. So maybe it's getting used to knowing what sort of sounds to listen for. And your brain, I guess, picks up stuff even though you can't necessarily hear it, straight away, but you know it's there. So I find that awe-inspiring. I mean, I was in Presque Isle State Park in Pennsylvania, and everyone heard everything. I'm visual. I come to the belief now that there's three types of birders. There's the visual ones like me, and I think I'm visual because I was birding in a city. There wasn't any woods near me at all, really. So all the stuff I was seeing was in open vistas, and that's why I love wetlands. They're my favorite habitat. Then you got people that can hear everything. I got a friend here in Extremadura, my friend Martin Kelsey. He can hear a pin drop in Poland. He can hear everything. And then you got the rare people who can do both. And I totally envy those guys and girls as well. I just can't, I just can't get onto that level at all. But I just find it interesting how we kind of develop our senses the way we do. And I think often it's down to where you started or what your background was in terms of, where you kind of started connecting to nature. For me, it was in a noisy city. So I didn't hear the sound so much. It's more about seeing. But anyway, that's one thing I've noticed. I love that. I love the fact when I go to the US, I can stand next to someone and know, oh yeah, you're hearing that. Okay, fine. But I love also going to wetlands because then I can compete because I can see.
Yeah, it's interesting your thought about the friendly, North American birders in that, I'm not a real hardcore Twitcher or anything currently, but back when I was younger, I used to do a lot more of that twitching stuff, listing, chasing, whatever you want to call it in the US, Canada. But I did get to go to a couple of twitches in the UK, and it was serious business, David. It was like people all lined up with their scopes, nobody talking. And I rolled up with a couple of British birders, so I was kind of following their lead. And they set up and said hello to the person next to them, but there was no talk about what they were looking at. And I thought this is really weird, because in the U.S. or in Canada where I grew up, you'd go in there, and go, "Hey, is the bird here?" And somebody go, "Oh, look at my scope," and yeah, and then you'd all look and you'd be chatting. It'd be like a social hour, and there's sometimes some people go, "Come on, let's look at the bird," stop talking, and it was so the opposite in the UK. It was very, very intense. And I thought, like, wow, I'm not sure this is enjoyable, really.
I was going to say similarly with the density of birders. So maybe there's a total number of birders that's greater in the US, but it feels like birding is so much more widely known in the UK. And that you see those pictures of like hundreds and hundreds of people gathered for vagrants in the UK, and you rarely see that in the US. It's just so much more diluted.
Photos from like that Acadian flycatcher a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like it looked like there's like 600 people, and they all look pretty similar also. It looks like
also like 600 scopes, and
very
it's interesting because I used to twitch when I was younger as well. I think the last twitch I did was on the last sort of conscious twitch was when I was on Yards of Scilly, and 900 of us stood along a lane for maybe 5 hours waiting for a Philly Vireo. And, there was a bit of chatter, but most of the chatter was about, when I went and saw this, it's all boring stuff for me. And I was standing there thinking, what am I doing here? And then a common chiff chaff popped his head out of a tree, and everyone shouted out, "That's it." And I thought, that's not it. I've never seen a Philly Vireo before, but that's a chiff chaff. There was this mass hallucination even. But I just didn't enjoy that at all. I much rather tried to be a finder than, someone that runs after other people's birds. But yeah, look, I'm no disrespect, by the way, to my British colleagues, because obviously, I've got a lot of good friends in Britain and in Europe, In fact, yeah, Europe especially. I've got some really nice friends who are, really nice people as birders. But on the whole, I think when I go to the US, I meet more people who are much more willing to sort of give you more information and to find out if you're okay. And especially when they hear your accent, they want to try and help you, which is quite good. But one more thing, talking about listing, I'm not really a lister as well. I keep a list, but I'm not a lister as such. But when it comes to Extremadura and when it comes to my eBird list, I have to be on December the 31st. I have to be at least in the top 10. I have to be. And I'm fretting because at the moment I'm 13th. I've only seen 201 species.
Uh-oh.
I need another maybe 7 or 8 to get in the top 10. I don't know where that's coming from because I've got a week because I'm going back to England until November. What do I do? I'm torn. I'm upset. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. You should hang up on us
Get
right
birding,
now.
man. Yeah,
Get
start
going.
birding.
Get birding.
I feel the same way, by the way. I had a similar thing where I was like, I set the goal of being, getting over 200 in Philadelphia and trying to be in the top 10. And it looks like I am going to dip out on that goal for the year.
Every year, I'm number one in my yard.
Yeah, exactly.
In my home. So there you go. Set the bar low so you can always succeed. Hey, I think there's a what you said about being a finder. That is obviously the most exciting thing ever as a birder, right? But we always think about finding something super rare, but finding the 11 flycatchers in your local patch, that is the equal level of excitement. If you're a patch birder or you're, a city birder or whatever it is, the more restricted in the sense you are in your zone of birding, the more opportunities you have to be finding something cool for you, right? It may not interest somebody else that you saw something, or maybe it does. But I think that's actually something really to be promoted in birding, that, we, instead of driving around all over the place looking for rare birds, you can be in your place finding things that are unusual for you and your place.
It's such a great point. And that's patch birding, it grounds you, right? It kind of gives you a benchmark by which you can assimilate information from other places that you go birding. So it's like, not only do you derive the joy of setting a new high count for whatever species in your patch, you can add new species, you can have fantastic exciting days, but it can also just help you understand birds in a temporal and spatial way outside of your patch, and I do think it's a great practice, patch birding.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's cool. And Molly talks about, her spot, with not only about the birds, but the trees and everything that's going on. Like you can actually concentrate on learning something really in a broad way when you restrict yourself to a smaller space.
Totally.
Right?
And it's not just the species you're seeing, it's how they're behaving. It's like you said, where you're finding them. There's all these different ways that you can start to understand birds and everything else on a deeper level. I think the pandemic opened that up a lot. Yeah. Like when people were stuck at home, you start noticing more of that. I definitely did.
Yeah, when you stop and look, that's when you see. I mean, I get a bit, call me old-fashioned, but I just get annoyed when people come up to me who aren't birders and say, what are you looking for? And I'm saying, I'm looking for everything. I'm looking for love. I'm looking for, in terms of nature, I'm looking for everything, for me, it's not about chasing after rare birds. It's about just being out and enjoying life and just seeing stuff, And when you start doing that, that's when you start seeing the rare birds, for me, that's the only reason why I go out to get grounded and just to enjoy life. It's one of the very few things I do in life that gives me complete 100% pleasure.
Yeah. No, it's and the key is, I've always told this to people about birds. It's like you love it so much when you get to this level of love for birds and nature, you cannot keep it to yourself. You want to have other people do this. You want your neighbor to sort of go, hey, what's that bird? And you get them a little further into it. And it just becomes a thing that is just so wonderful that you cannot keep it to yourself. I feel like that's one of kind of my goals, thought processes, in terms of my birding over time. It's been, it's not just touring or doing these pelagics because it's a job, but it's part of just getting others out there, and looking.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Well, David, I think that's what's so cool about the model that you're building around your brand is that you just start with sharing the joy of birding. And then that's the gateway to all these other initiatives and projects and great things that can happen just from finding the love of that. It's really cool.
And it's so easy for people to see that because a lot of people come out with me who've never been birding before. And
oh, yeah.
You just show them a bird, you give them a backstory, and that's it. Bam. Smile on their face. Oh my God, I didn't realize this was here next to where I live, and that's where, that's where they start getting interested,
It is so cool to be excited and show your excitement for that to other people and just show that it's okay to just be totally awed by things that have been right under your nose. And I love birding for sharing that, just expressing joy in that way too. Whew.
Yeah. You know what's a shame though, is that George, who has been a urban birder, has now moved to the suburbs. So he's now a suburban birder.
I've always been a sub-birder, but no, I think that is not entirely fair, Alvaro.
My whole role here is to poke fun
and achieve that goal at every chance you do. But I think as I well noted, I am still inside the city limits here, and that was not a small factor in choosing this neighborhood when we were choosing a home.
Oh, so you're actually in the city? I did not know. I thought you were, outside of the boundaries of the confines of Philadelphia.
I am less than a half a mile inside the city limits. In fact, one of the roads nearby is called Old Line Road.
City Limit Drive.
It's called Old Line Road. It used to be the city limit back in the day, but yeah, no, it's I love city birding as we've talked about a bunch, and I am excited. David, you'll be pleased to hear that I'm leading a series of bird walks this coming October. I'll be doing every Thursday. I will be leading a 90-minute bird walk in downtown Philadelphia at a little place called Independence Hall, where I like to call it the bird place of America. And I'll be leading bird walks there once, four times this October and peak migration, and that way I get my urban birding fix as opposed to sort of urban suburban, which I'm getting out here. But I'll, and it is a really interesting place. It's kind of like our Central Park in a way. It's a big patch of green surrounded by concrete and glass and everything. It's actually the surrounding area is actually one of the most difficult places for birds in that there are a ton of window strikes there. But it is also, I think, a refuge for quite a few species and a probably a startling diversity as well. So looking forward to that series of bird walks. Should be fun.
Actually, I'm thinking, we sometimes have our little trivial questions that we come up with, and people who listen will send us answers. But I just thought, we're talking about urban birder. We're talking to a Philadelphia person. There are very few birds actually named for cities. Philadelphia vireo is one of them. Baltimore Oriole, right, in North America. There's probably Bogota
rail.
or that, right?
Yeah, Bogota rail.
Yeah, Bogota rail. But I bet it'd be kind of a cool thing to see how many birds in the world are actually named for a city. Because I bet there's not that many. I bet there's less than.
Yeah, I don't know if you count in scientific
not a huge
names,
number.
But we also have mourning warbler.
Just English names, I'd say.
Morning warbler is Geothlypis Philadelphia, and Bonaparte skull is Croicocephalus Philadelphia. And I suspect there's not many scientific.
Ringbill gull?
Delawarensis. Yeah, so that's
Delaware. Yes, it's that. Yeah.
But It's interesting, isn't it? Right? You start thinking about it because in Europe there probably aren't very many
No
names for a
Suffolk
city,
warblers
right?
or
No, there isn't. Just Dartford.
Dartford. Yeah.
Dartford warblers. Sandwich Turn is named after a town. Yeah.
Nice.
But guys, how many birds on the American list? Can you name me 5 birds on the American list whose international name is just one word? Go.
Ruff.
But
Sora.
Killdeer, Wren-tit.
Okay, finished. Okay, move on to the next one then.
Sora.
Next question. I've asked the wrong people here.
I think that's one that's come up on our podcast before too.
Sapayoa.
We love these
There's some
trivial
really good
things, you
one-word
know.
ones.
I mean, we were getting letters the other day about the single families with we'll have to bring that back. You know, that how many families have
we were talking about the accenters, right? The prunella, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the accenters. They're all in the same genus, but they're a single family. So all members of the family have just one genus, and what the biggest number was, and it was, I guess it's leaf warblers.
Philoscopus.
Yeah, Philoscopus. Because they're now Philoscopidae. They're actually a family, different. You know,
listen,
it used to be, right? But
for maybe a week, I was the world's expert on sandgrouse. So really? I did. Yeah, I went to the British Birdwatching Fair, and I entered Bird Brain of Britain, and my chosen subject was sandgrouse. How many species of sandgrouse are there in the world, and how many genus? How many genera?
There's Terracles. Oh, jeez.
Oh my God! Look at him. Is it like a dozen species?
But I want to say there's like.
Oh, he knows. George is the guy.
I've seen a few, but
how many?
I'm going to guess there's like 17 species and like 4 genera.
Molly?
Oh gosh. I'll go with the odds. I'll go for 16 species.
Oh, you're doing the old Price is Right. Genera. You know, go without highest number without going over.
Yeah.
You just $1 to me, Molly.
Yeah, right. I'll go high. 20 species and
okay. Well, Molly's right. There's 16 species, and just 2 genera. There's the Tercales and there's the Tibetan and Pallas's sandgrouse. Sapra, whatever it is.
Yeah, I can't remember. I was assuming that there'd been some new ones that I didn't know, but I failed. At least I was close. I was close on the species. Yeah.
But you see, the Price is Right.
Yep.
You know, system.
It did.
It worked.
Well, let's see here. I'm looking at Wikipedia, and
that's all lies in there.
Well, yeah, here he does have
should go to
sure.
Birds of the
I was
World.
just going to start here. This is the first thing that popped up, but yeah.
Did you know, David, that sandgrouse have been introduced?
Yeah. I told you I was a world expert. You didn't believe me, did you?
No. I just thought maybe that little bit you didn't know.
Terracles and Serhaptes.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah. I have to say it's a very sexy group of birds, especially if you're coming from North America. Like they just sort of like the mystery of deserts and vast open spaces. You know, and I remember like the idea of seeing chestnut-bellied in Hawaii, right? Chestnut-bellied sandgrouse. It's like, or is it black-bellied? I can't remember.
I thought it could have been black-bellied.
Yeah, it's one of the two. But I just remember being like the idea of seeing sandgrouse. I remember seeing them on the Big Island one time, and I was like, oh my God, there they are. Yeah. But yeah, like there's such a romance to those birds.
You know, I don't think I've ever seen a sandgrouse. Well, I haven't seen sandgrouse a lot, obviously, because they live in North America, but I've never seen one on the ground. I've only seen them flying.
One of the first one I ever photographed, I like stalked. I was in Ethiopia, and I like stalked it and like got closer and closer and closer. And then I came back. I was like, I think I got some pretty good pictures, you know? And they were like, you know, there's lions there. And I was like, oh. And like that night, we where we were sleeping, there was lions. Like, man, it was before I'd ever seen a lion, and they were howling, man. They were roaring right there, and I was like, should have thought that through a little bit more. It was probably a pretty close call. Oops, speaking of lions.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lion there.
Yeah,
showed up there on your screen.
Yeah.
Your cat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we should probably get to scooting and let David go. It's late over where you're at, David.
He's got to drive to the other end of Extremadura to be up at dawn for 2 or 3 new species for his list.
I've got a barn owl pair that lives literally a mile away, and I've never seen them ever. The migrants are coming through now. I still need to see Eurasian wryneck. I normally see that in January. I've not seen one at all this year. I've not seen common redstart yet. There's lots of species that are fairly regular, low-lying fruits I've not had yet this year, and I'm going next week back to England. It's terrible.
You'll pick
be
up
able
some.
to get some. You'll be able to get a few new ones. Yeah, but he needs enough to move them 3 spots.
I need 8 species.
Wow, better hustle, man.
It's always good to have goals.
Well, David, thank you so much for your time here today and for talking to us. Have you got anything coming up, or any people can find you right at the Urban Birder, right? That's your site?
Well, firstly, thank you very much, guys, for having me. Been a complete pleasure. I loved every second of it. Love talking about birds. It's not often I get to do that, to be honest, surprisingly. You can find me at theurbanbirderworld.com, and I'm also on all the socials, including Instagram. And I'd love to meet you all one day, because I'm coming back to the US. I think the US is a regular spot for me now. I love coming over and seeing my friends. And I'm making new ones, of course. And you are all welcome to come to Spain as well. Not all at once, obviously, but come over.
We'll all come. It'll be a lifeless event.
Yeah.
We'll all come and crash your pad. 30 of our best friends. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll bring the vino.
Fantastic.
Well, thanks so much, David. And thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back again soon. Cheers, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Adios.
Bye.